Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of the Haqiqat Show, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I am your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we have another interesting, fun, exciting episode for you, looking at the ultimate showdown, as some have been calling it, between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. This was an interesting debate, had interesting highlights that we're going to review and comment on, inshallah, for this episode. And overall, I'll give my thoughts on how the election is shaping up. The U.S. presidential election is less than 2 months away, I think about 55 days away. So this has a lot of relevance to Muslims and the Muslim world. It has a lot of relevance to what we're seeing in Palestine and the continuing ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people by this Zionist occupation. So we're going to look at the highlights, some of the domestic policy that they discuss, like abortion, immigration. We're seeing a lot of anti-immigrant talk coming from Christians or Christian nationalists, as well as other factions. Anti-immigration. This is very concerning for a lot of Muslims. It can pose a lot of danger for Muslims if things continue to escalate. So we want to analyze some of these anti-immigrant comments from Donald Trump and from the right wing. What should Muslims make of this? We're seeing some Muslims actually side with anti-immigrant sentiment. We're going to analyze this. Is this actually Islamically appropriate? Is it correct? How should we understand this? We're going to comment on it, inshallah. And as always, I'm going to be looking at the chat. So if there's any problem with the sound, just put it in the chat. If there's any comments you want to make, I'll be looking at it. If you want to highlight your comment, make sure to put a super chat. That helps the channel. It helps the algorithm and helps more people see the live stream, inshallah. So as always, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. The link to the newsletter is within the description of the video. This is important because if YouTube decides to take down this whole channel and delete all of our videos, over 700 videos, where are you going to find us? Where are you going to find the next place that we host the Haqiqat Show and Genius of Islam and our debates? We need to be able to contact you, and the best way that we can contact you is through your email address. So go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. We won't sell your information. We won't do anything with your information other than email you periodically, very rarely, about updates with Haqiqatjou, with MuslimSkeptic. And in the event that we get banned, we get taken down off of YouTube, we need to be able to reach you, inshallah. Also, how about subscribing to the YouTube channel? If you're here, you're already on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. Or if you're watching on X, go ahead and follow. That helps a lot. About 40% of you are not subscribed, so why not? Okay, so those are the reminders, the periodic reminders I have to give the audience. And let us get started on the debate reaction. Okay, let me know how the sound is. I'm going to look at the chat.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Okay, so she introduced herself to Donald Trump. She's Kamala Harris. So that's kind of funny that as if Trump doesn't know who she is. But he also said have fun. So have fun in the debate. They didn't look like they're having much fun. Hopefully we'll get to have more fun than they did.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to wait?
So by the way, we're not going to go through the entire debate. Like, this was an hour and a half debate, and a lot of it is irrelevant. There's a lot of repetition, as is the case usually with these debates. When Donald Trump is involved, Trump repeats himself over and over again. He kind of skips around. So when they're supposed to be talking about, I don't know, abortion or healthcare or whatever, he'll bring in immigration. So he's constantly, this whole debate, he focused on immigration, whereas Kamala focused on abortion. And these are the themes that kept coming forward over and over.
And on the racial identity of your opponent.
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking...
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us. And
Don't take this as very genuine, because if you recall Black Lives Matter, the protests, like, what was more dividing than Black Lives Matter? What was more dividing than the protests that were happening in 2021, for example? And that was extremely divisive, but the Democrats have no problem using that kind of divisive rhetoric, or that entire movement, buttressing that, supporting that in order to advance their interests. So acting innocent like only Donald Trump is concerned with race, this is not very compelling.
especially by race.
Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well.
And this is like a boomer talking point, like she's a Marxist. Like the whole system of American capitalism is not really capitalism in the sense of free markets. The entire system is basically socialism for the top 1%. The top 1% are able to get all kinds of regulations in favor of their bottom line, their profit, their ability to extract as much wealth from the bottom 99%. That's a socialistic system, if you mean that socialism is a redistribution of wealth. They're constantly redistributing the wealth of Americans and the entire globe and concentrating it in the hands of the top 1%. So it is socialism for the top 1%. And Donald Trump is 100% in favor of that type of socialism. So this kind of talking about, oh, she's a Marxist, like, okay, you are as well. Your party is as well in the sense of socialism for the top 1%. Like, neither of these candidates has shown any type of hard line against this major problem. Corporate greed, the ability for the biggest and wealthiest corporations to lobby the government, the US government, in order to enact policies and laws that favor them at the expense of everyone else. And the biggest example of this was the 2008 financial collapse in the US. And what did we see? Like, the housing bubble popped. You had so many American people who were pushed below the poverty line because they lost their homes. They were given these predatory loans that they couldn't pay off because the loans were high interest rate, and they shouldn't have been given those loans in the first place to buy houses. Those houses, the value of them dropped significantly because there was a bubble created by these predatory loans, etc. And what happened? People lost their homes. The economy crashed. And then what does the government do? It prints money in order to pay off or bail out these major investment banks like Goldman Sachs. who profited greatly at the expense of the entire globe. That's the kind of socialism that the Republicans are in favor of. That's the kind of socialism that Barack Obama was in favor of as a Democrat. So that's what really has caused so much pain and suffering for the American people and the rest of the globe as well. And who benefits? The rich continue to get richer and richer. As Muslims, this is something that we should be concerned about. This is something because not only does it affect us personally, but it also affects the entire globe. It causes all kinds of injustice, which creates crime, because as you have more people in poverty, they're going to have to resort to criminal activity. They're going to have to spend more of their time working meaningless jobs in order to live, in order to survive. They don't have enough money. Look at the power of the dollar. And this is something I was talking to my dad the other day is, when it comes to the dollar, he was able to fund, or he had a friend actually who was able to fund a graduate education simply by working in the summers, like a manual labor type of job in the shipping yards, carrying boxes, carrying load, like loading and unloading. He spent 3 months doing that in the summer, and then he could, live comfortably, like in a dorm, and pay his tuition, pay for books, pay for food, like all of that, just because of 3 months of working hard, like a full-time job. That was minimum wage. That goes to the purchasing power of the dollar. But now with inflation, after 50 years or 40 years, you have to basically not only work 1 full-time job, you might have to work 2 full-time jobs. You have families where both the mom and the dad are working multiple full-time jobs on minimum wage, and the minimum wage might be $15, it might be $17, for example. In the US, the costs of living have gone through the roof. You want to buy a gallon of milk, now you have to pay $4 or $5 for a gallon of milk. You want groceries, before you could pay $20 and get a huge basket of groceries or shopping cart of groceries and feed your family for half a month. Now, $20 is barely going to get you like milk and eggs, let alone bread, let alone meat, the cost of meat. So this is the type of economic crisis. What causes that? It's from printing money. And then when they print the money, who gets the money immediately? It goes into the hands of these banks. It goes into the hands of these major banks, which then loan to the major corporations. So they get the fat, they get the benefit. And then this is the whole lie of trickle-down economics that, eventually if the corporations are rich and the banks are rich, they're going to distribute that to the common man. But that's not the case. It doesn't make economic sense for them to, distribute that or to create opportunities for others to make money. They invest that in their own corporations within their stock in order to continue to make profit. That's the capitalist system. And Islam is against this. First of all, it's all based on riba, obviously, but just the kind of corruption that is entailed by this system of printing money and then distributing that to the richest banks and the richest corporations first, where they have the priority. This is completely contrary to the justice of Islam. And if you follow Islam and you follow the Quran, and Allah says that this is haram, riba meaning interest, usury is completely haram, then you wouldn't have this kind of system. It would be just by default something impermissible, number one. Second of all, the idea of printing money is something that is not Islamically acceptable. And we had a good friend was just mentioning how important the gold standard is, that tying your money to a standard of actual value, which is gold. Gold is something that's inherently valuable. People value it, and its price remains stable. Its value remains stable over time. What that means is that you can't just print money at will. And so you avoid a lot of these bubbles. You avoid inflation. But the U.S. has gone away from the gold standard. The U.S. has gone away from, and other countries as well have gone away from the gold standard. And this is causing all kinds of disasters. So let's see. Brother Bilal, Jazakallah khair for your super chat. He says, Assalamu alaikum, Habibi. Will you ever debate Nick Fuentes? Love you for the sake of Allah. Wa alaikum assalam, brother. Jazakallah khair for your very generous super chat. I appreciate it. Will I ever debate Fuentes? I don't think he wants to debate. He, doesn't debate religion. I've suggested debating. But maybe, after he watches this stream, he'll be interested in debating, because he has he's been criticizing Sneeko. He's been attacking Sneeko, saying that Sneeko is just low IQ, and he's been spending too much time with low IQ Muslims. I think he's joking, but this is a stupid comment, because Sneeko's critique of racism and anti-immigrant racism is right on the money. Sneeko is absolutely right. If you saw the clip, Christianity has nothing to do with racism. There are religions that are very racist. They're supremacist. And, I've discussed that on different debates I've had on other religions. But Christianity, it doesn't have this idea that there's one specific race that's superior or has been favored by God. But you see many of these Christian nationalists engage in a kind of racism and a critique of other races as low IQ. That doesn't make sense. It's completely incoherent. And we're going to talk about it when we get to the immigration part of the stream. So if Fuentes or anyone else, any of these Christian nationalists want to debate that, I'm more than happy to do that. No problem. So anyway, this is the type of problem that is not discussed, when it comes to the economy and socialism, and how people are being bled dry by this system that's designed to make them poorer and poorer and make the rich richer and richer.
Up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
I'm talking now. Does that sound familiar? So he's referring to when there were protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters at one of Kamala's rallies, and they were shouting about how she's pro-genocide. She said, I'm talking now, and silenced them in this condescending way. So now Trump throws that back in her face. So that's a funny moment.
They have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born, and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, so that was a big point that he kept making, is that, you have post-birth abortions. And that's, the term that's used, post-birth. So the philosophical question is, when does life begin? Why does life have to be? Because if you say, the typical pro-abortion stance is that, what makes a woman have the right to abort in the 3rd trimester, basically 9 months of pregnancy, what gives her the right is her body, her choice. It's her body, and when the baby is inside, or not the baby, the fetus, then the fetus depends on the mother. So the mother should be able to choose at any time in that process, as long as they're attached by the umbilical cord, to cut the cord and abort. But after the baby is born, then it's an independent being. And therefore, of course, we would not support post-birth abortion. That's murder. That's killing a baby. But why? I mean, the same logic would apply. A baby is not really a fully independent being. The baby can't survive if you left the baby, on the street or in a trash can. Unfortunately, as some people do, they have birth and then they dump the baby. The baby can't survive. It's not independent. It's still dependent. And needs to be cared for. It needs to be taken care of. So why can't you extend the same logic that, a mother still has the burden of taking care of the baby. So it's not a full independent person. Life hasn't begun yet. Life has not begun if there's any kind of dependence there or dependence relation. So that the logic of pro-abortion is not very compelling. But then the question is, well, when does life begin? Because in this debate, Donald Trump said that, well, abortion, I'm in favor of abortion in cases of incest or cases of rape. I'm in favor of abortion in those cases. But what the Catholics will say, the religious Catholics will say that, well, no, actually, even in the case of incest and rape, that's still a life. That's still a life that you cannot just murder, cannot just kill, because life begins at conception. So if you're in favor of abortion because of rape or incest, then that's still murder. That's not justifiable. And they have their pro-life arguments. So that's why you need, you have to appeal to a religious framework. You have to appeal to a metaphysical framework and say that, well, when does life begin? Christianity or Catholicism has an answer. Islam has an answer. Islam says that life begins at the 3-month period or 4-month period, 4 months after conception. Some said 40 days after conception. Some scholars, based on the hadith, statements of the Prophet ﷺ, interpreting the hadith. So that's when life begins. So abortion after that point becomes a question of you're taking a life. It becomes murder. But sometimes that can be justifiable. That can be justifiable if, the mother's life is at risk. The mother's life is at risk, her life versus the child's life. And Islam gives you guidance on that the mother's life is more important to preserve in that case. And then you have, but as I've explained before, even prior to when the soul is breathed into the fetus, that doesn't mean that abortion prior to that point is permissible or is halal. No, that is also impermissible. And this is the position of all the schools of thought in Islam. So Islam is, and the schools of thought may differ as to when the point of murder happens, but they don't differ on the fact that you shouldn't be killing your babies, especially, or you terminating your pregnancies, especially for the sake of economic reasons. You're worried about being poor. And this is what Allah says explicitly in the Quran. Do not kill your children for fear of poverty. So that's the main reason that women get abortions. They don't want to ruin their lifestyle. They don't want the burden of having a mouth to feed. It's for economic reasons, for personal reasons. If you look at the statistics, over 95% or 97% of abortions are for exactly that reason. So then, unfortunately, you have some Muslims who think that, oh, well, I'm not murdering the baby. I'm just getting abortion because, oh, I'm pursuing my PhD, or, oh, I'm pursuing my, my life, my dreams. So, oh, I got pregnant. They might be married too. They're married, and the husband and wife, these simps are like, yeah, honey, we're not ready for a baby right now. Just get the abortion. That's not allowed. That's not allowed in Islam. So Islam is anti-abortion. It's pro-life. Yeah, there might be some nuances because of the issue of, well, if the mother's life is at risk, then she should be preserved. Her life should be preserved. Catholics, I think, disagree with that. They say preserve the life of the baby. I don't know how that makes sense. How are you going to end the life of a mother? The mother can have many babies. The mother can have many children. At that point, and she might have children who depend on her. She might have a whole family that depends on her, and she might even have children who are under 2 years old who depend on her for breast milk. But I think, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, they believe that you should preserve the life of the baby as opposed to the mother. I think Islam's position makes more sense. So but again, this whole abortion debate, Donald Trump is not going to appeal to God in this. He's not going to appeal to scripture. He's not going to appeal to the Bible. So what is this based off of?
hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban.
It's a lie. I'm not saying.
Yeah, so he says in the debate that he actually doesn't, he supports abortion in cases of incest and rape. He said that explicitly, so I don't know why she's claiming that he's against that. The states, like he's making a states' rights issue. Like the states should decide their own laws. There shouldn't be a federal ban. There shouldn't be Roe v. Wade that determines that it should be legal across all states. The Supreme Court is just saying that each state should have the right to legislate on that without the involvement of the federal government. And that's what Trump is reiterating. But again, it's not addressing like the metaphysics of that. There's also a comment here that I just passed by. I think it was Brad. Brad says that, well, what about in the case of like a 2-year-old child? Should the child be sacrificed to save the mother? Or should the mother sacrifice the child? Where's that comment? The chat is going too fast. Can't believe I missed it. He's bringing up a theoretical case. Hold on, here it is. I want to get it. So Daniel, by that logic, should a mother sacrifice her 2-year-old baby to save herself if she has other children to take care of? So is this like a Sophie's choice type of situation? Like it's between her versus her baby? What is the because when it comes to the womb, the assumption is that you can't save the baby, right? The assumption is that you can't save the baby. If you can save the baby and save the mother's life, then you obviously do both. But if it's one or the other, then the mother has priority. She's a fully formed adult, and she might have other children. Like there's other considerations to make. Now, should a 2-year-old child is born already, should the mother sacrifice the child? Like what's this exact scenario? Because this is a situation where you could get into cost benefit analysis, but you're kind of confusing it because you're saying that she's going to sacrifice her own 2-year-old. Why? In what situation would she do that? Is there terrorists? Are there criminals saying you better kill your baby, otherwise we're gonna kill you? Is that what you're saying? That seems very far-fetched.
Signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
So what's the difference between Donald Trump and Kamala on this abortion issue? They don't seem to have an ideological difference. Republicans have always been very pro-life and anti-abortion, and then you have Donald Trump, who's supposed to be the most far-right president that we've ever had, saying clearly that he doesn't support an abortion ban. He doesn't support it. So if there is a state, which there are, like California, that say, yeah, we can abort up until 9 months, he's not in favor of any kind of restrictions on that. The state has decided it's a state issue. So what's really the difference between Kamala and Trump ideologically when it comes to abortion? And the crazy thing about Trump is that you have so many Trump supporters. Trump is basically liberalizing a huge portion of the American population who have historically been so anti-abortion and pro-life. Now, because of the influence of Trump on that demographic, they're being shifted leftward. Like, they're being shifted more and more liberal. So this is a disaster. Like, this is really bad. And people who are pro-life should punish Trump, and they should punish the Republican Party for basically compromising on this core issue of theirs. They should punish the Republicans instead of saying like, oh, well, we have to be politically pragmatic. We have to just go with what is going to win us elections. Like, what's the point of winning an election if one of your core beliefs is not being represented? Like, what's the point of putting someone like Trump and J.D. Vance in the White House if they're not going to defend like your core values and beliefs? This is how democracy, like the entire democratic system, is meant to erode away religious values and turn everyone into liberals. Because the left wing is going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing leftward. And the right wing, instead of pushing rightward, instead of like the left wing is getting more and more liberal on abortion, more and more liberal on feminism, more and more liberal on all of these social issues. They're like an engine that keeps pushing society leftward. Republicans or conservatives, they're not conserving anything. They're not trying to push rightward at the same speed and the same force in order to counterbalance the left. Instead, they're just trying to stand still, and while they're standing still, they're getting dragged more and more to the left. And then you can see this very clearly with Donald Trump. They're not putting any kind of serious pushback. The result of this is that everyone is slowly becoming more and more liberal. The whole spectrum is shifting left, 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 left. And people who are involved in these partisan politics, they don't see the bigger picture. They don't see like where this is all headed. Like, what is the whole point of liberal democracy? Like, the whole system of liberal democracy is designed to liberalize and secularize all of society, to remove religion, to remove commitment to religion, to remove these things like family values, to remove these things like a commitment to a community or a tradition. That's what philosophical liberalism does. This was started with the Enlightenment. And the whole point of conservatives is kind of to provide an escape valve or a pressure valve so that people that are so shocked by liberal reform have a way to express themselves, but express themselves in an acceptable way, in an acceptable system that will tolerate that little bit of pushback while it maintains full speed to the left. And that's what Donald Trump is. He's like a pressure valve. He allows these boomers and he allows these Christian conservatives some room to express their grievance. Yeah. We are fine with abortion. Just make sure that it's only in the extreme cases of rape and incest. And okay, maybe even the first trimester is okay. But that's where we draw the line, right? Or, we're okay with full-grown adults getting gender transition surgery, but just don't do it on the kids. That's where we draw the line. This is conservatism. Like, it's just a joke.
Do you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America.
What we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money, and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
Yeah, so the talk like this is so disingenuous. Like, that's why you can't take this debate seriously. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. He's not like an outsider. In 2016, he could plausibly claim that he's an outsider. He is going to drain the swamp. He's going to come and really solve these problems that are caused by partisan politics and the deep state and the establishment that wants to maintain a status quo where people are getting poorer and poorer and the rich are getting richer and richer. He had a plausible argument to make in 2016, but now in 2024 it doesn't really ring true because he was president for 4 years. He didn't overturn Obamacare. He didn't provide a solution to this healthcare disaster, this healthcare crisis. Healthcare is one of the main reasons that the American population is going bankrupt. It's one of the main reasons that so much of the wealth of the middle class is being sucked up. Because if you look at the lower class economically, there are plans. You can get Medicaid in many states. You can get benefits, healthcare benefits that are provided by the state. So the lower classes, there are options for medical care. It's not great medical care. But then the middle class, they're the ones who have to foot the bill. They're the ones who have to pay for insurance. Usually it's through their employer. They have to pay hundreds of dollars a month in premiums. So a huge chunk of their paycheck is actually going to these insurance plans. That is a huge economic cost. And what is causing that economic cost? Obama didn't address it. He developed Obamacare with the help of insurance companies and the insurance lobby, the healthcare lobby. And Trump didn't do anything either. There's a very simple solution, actually. There's a very simple solution to the healthcare crisis. And I'll tell you what it is. If you don't want to get into a single payer system, single payer means that you don't have all of these insurance companies. You just have one payment that's made for insurance, like controlled by the government. So similar to NHS in the UK. That is a single payer system. But when you have a single payer system, you automatically reduce prices. You automatically reduce the price of healthcare because the healthcare providers or the companies, the healthcare companies that are making equipment or they're making medical supplies or they're developing pharmaceuticals, they are competing with each other to sell to the government because they want to be, imagine you're making Band-Aids. You want to make the Band-Aids as economically as possible and as cheap as possible so you can bid for that government contract. And if you want to win that government contract, you have to have the most affordable, the lowest price. So just having a single payer creates all of this competition with healthcare providers. Because they want to win the government contract. So that's the single payer system. Yeah, there are problems that can arise with the single payer system. The UK's medical care system with the NHS is not necessarily the best system. People have to wait months and maybe even over a year to get an appointment to get like results for a medical issue that they have. And honestly, in the US, it's the same thing now. In the US, there's a massive shortage of healthcare professionals. You sometimes have to wait months for an appointment. Sometimes you have to wait months for results of lab tests or scans that you're doing. You have to wait months, or sometimes the results don't even come in because the system is so broken and you have a lot of incompetence. People are being hired who are not qualified because there's a dearth of people who are going to be qualified for these positions. So the quality of care has gone way down, even in the US. even in the US, and we're still paying all of this money. We're paying all of this money, especially the middle class, for these overpriced insurance policies. The reason why the insurance policies, the premiums are so high, you're paying, hundreds of dollars a month for you or for your family. You also have high deductibles, like you're paying out of pocket. The reason for that is that the health on the provider side, on when those who are providing services, they can just charge whatever they want. Oh, you came into the emergency room. Even if you just step in an emergency room and put your name down, they'll charge you $2,000. $2,000. Your insurance is supposed to cover most of that, but someone has to cover the $2,000 bill that goes to that emergency room. So why does it cost $2,000 to step into emergency room? Or if you look at the itemized bill, if you're ever in a hospital, if they give you some Tylenol, like extra strength Tylenol, that pill is $20. That's what the hospital is charging you or your insurance company. If you don't have insurance, you have to pay the $20 for that one extra strength Tylenol, or the insurance is going to pick it up. And the insurance is not going to argue or negotiate, every single item there. They're just going to pay it. They're going to pay that $20. That's not them doing charity. They're pulling it out of these premiums. They're just going to raise your premium. They're going to raise your deductible. And there's no checks on this. It's a runaway system. They can continue to increase as much as they want. The cost of all of these services, all of these pharmaceuticals, they can just continue to raise the cost because those companies, especially Big Pharma, is lobbying the government not to put any control on this, not to put any brakes on this. Let us deregulate, and let us do whatever we want. So who is footing the bill? It's the American people, mainly the middle class, and this is causing a huge economic burden. They're not solving this problem. Trump, he has a plan. What's the plan? I'll show you what the plan is. But you were president for 4 years. Why didn't you implement this amazing plan that you had?
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
I have concepts of a plan. How are you in the White House for 4 years and you only have concepts of a plan? How do you not have a plan? And one of the big, in 2016, one of the big parts of his platform was overturning Obamacare. Obamacare is a disaster and we have to overturn it. That was his argument. I agree. Obamacare is a disaster. Obamacare didn't actually solve any of the healthcare issues with America. All Obamacare does is it mandates that you have to get insurance. You have to have health insurance coverage. It mandates it. If you don't, and you don't have it, then you get penalized. That's all that Obamacare does. Who does that benefit? That benefits the insurance companies. That doesn't benefit the American people. Like if you really needed health care prior to Obamacare, you could have got it through Medicaid. You could have got it through the state. Even the red states, even the Republican states, they had these kinds of plans, Medicaid plans, that you could get health coverage, subsidized health coverage. But Obamacare just mandated things and created this kind of marketplace where it's easier for you to buy insurance that is either very expensive or it's just terrible insurance. Like it's just terrible coverage. That's all that Obamacare does. So if you're, you're probably going to get a lot better healthcare in many other countries of the world. Like the US is very substandard. The UK is increasingly substandard. So these are the problems that are leading to the downfall of the West. And these jokers are not able to promise anything or do it. I mean, they make promises, but they're not actually doing anything to solve it.
If we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath about what concepts you have and what plans. It's like very simple, like put price controls. You don't want a single payer system, fine, but at least like put controls on what they can charge, what these hospitals can charge, what these doctors can charge, what big pharmaceuticals can charge for their drugs. Like put some controls on, and don't make everything about subsidy. Like subsidizing it is not a solution, because where's the money for the subsidization coming from? It's coming from tax dollars that you're going to shovel to the big pharma, shovel to these big pharmaceutical companies. That's not a solution. That's still coming from the taxpayer, or the subsidy is coming from printing money, a bailout basically. And when you print money, what does that do? It causes inflation, and then you have to pay $10 for a gallon of milk or $20 for a dozen eggs. So these are not solutions. Like you have to actually tell these companies, sorry, you're not going to continue to bilk the American people. Sorry, you're going to have to suffer some profit loss next quarter. You're not going to have the $50 billion profit, $50 billion quarter like you're used to. You're going to have to suffer some profit loss. That's what needs to be said, but they're never going to say it. They're never going to say it. Why? Because you have these lobbies. You're not going to be president. You're not going to be in office if you have that kind of hard line. So that means the problem is never going to be solved. And that means that the country is just going to be driven further and further into the ground. Like this is the fall of American empire. Like this is why it happens. We just went over the case of healthcare, but every single industry is like this. Every single industry is just flooded with corruption, and we're seeing, like, tangibly, you can see that the United States is crumbling. Tangibly, you can see, like, when you drive on the street, you go outside, you see the people, like, the people are suffering. Like, poverty is really a big issue. People are really suffering in their families. They can't really afford anything. They have to resort to social welfare, and welfare is just a slower way to bankrupt the country, to pull resources from people. There's only one way that all that can end, and it's not going to be pretty.
I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
We have the big...
And your desires, like your dreams, your desires, like I'm going to appeal to your desires. Like, that's true in a sense. Like, all that they can promise is like more products, more products. We can get you faster, internet. We can make sure that you can buy more. We can make sure that, you have, your sexual freedom. That's what reproductive health means. That's what reproductive rights means. It means that you should be able to just sleep with whoever you want without any consequences. More LGBT, more like choice to alter your body, to live however you want. Like those kinds of freedoms, yeah, we want more of that. But things that actually human beings need or human beings care about on a wider scale, we're not going to address that. We're not going to, be able to provide you with a spouse. We're not going to be able to help you get married, to have a home, to have a household with your family, to raise children that love you and care for you and respect you. Like, we can't help you with any of that. We can't help you, be a part of a community that cares about you, that protects you, that helps you be social. Human beings are social creatures. We need human interaction with people who are like us, who share our values. We can't preserve your communities. We can't preserve your families or guarantee you a family. we can't, defend your religion. Like, religion doesn't really matter. Like, we want to get rid of religion. At most, we tolerate it. So you have like these beliefs, but so what? Those are private. Just keep them to yourselves. We can't help you preserve that. In fact, we're going to erode religion as much as possible. We're going to make sure that people can mock and belittle religion as much as possible within our culture. That's called free speech. That's called free thought. What else? Like we can't guarantee any of these other values. But as far as your desires, like your bodily desire for pleasure or to eat, yeah, we can make sure that we stuff your face as much as possible. We can get you as much pornography as possible. We can make sure that you can get as many OnlyFans subscriptions as possible. Yeah, that's what the capitalist system, the Western liberal system, that's all that they can provide and guarantee you. And there's none of these politicians are even addressing these issues, these problems. Like, these are the main problems, and it's not even on the radar. So imagine if you had a candidate who actually spoke to these kinds of issues. Like, I'm going to address you and tell you that, look, you are suffering because you're alone. You have no one who loves you, who cares for you. You have no future in terms of family. You just have a future of, working your meaningless job and coming home and paying rent. Like, that's just what you're going to have to do for the next 50 years of your life, 60 years of your life. But I'm going to come here and I'm going to give you a future by implementing policies that will make that a reality for the majority of people, like it has been in the past. Imagine like how a candidate like that would completely revolutionize Western politics. But such a candidate will never be allowed through the door. Such a candidate will be painted as an extremist. Such a candidate will be painted as an authoritarian or totalitarian. Why? Why? Because to actually put in place such policies to guarantee that you'll have a family, you'll have a community, you'll have religion, you'll have a wholesome life that you can live comfortably like people have lived in for the past. The only way to do that is to restrict people's freedoms, to in certain areas restrict people's freedoms. You'll have to create a situation where there's not 100% equality of all people. That contradicts liberalism, so it can't happen. It won't be allowed to happen. You'll just be painted as an extremist, a totalitarian.
Biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. In Springfield,
yeah, I agree with that. It is a failing nation.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
So I don't know who's eating dogs. This is like just a meme that's been shared because there was one picture of a Haitian or claimed to be a Haitian like holding a goose. So that picture went viral. And so now they're saying that, these Haitian immigrants are eating pets. Like, this is nonsense. This is exactly like the lie that was spread prior to the UK riots that, a Muslim immigrant from Africa stabbed some children. And it turned out to be, no, actually it was not an immigrant. It was someone who's second generation living in the UK. Not even a Muslim, it was a Christian. So these are just lies that are spread. And again, like this kind of racism, like going back to what I just said, like, is the problem with America that, immigrants are eating cats and dogs? Like, is that the problem that America faces? Is that what is making you not be able to find a wife? And is that what's making it impossible to have a stable marriage with children? Is it because of the Haitians? Is it because of the immigrants that, feminism is running rampant? Is it because of the Haitians that, your wife or your child is ill and you can't get a doctor's appointment, for 10 months? Like, is that because of the Haitians? Are the Haitians doing that? Are the immigrants like eating cats and dogs that causes these healthcare problems. So this is just a distraction. This is a complete distraction. I'm getting sick and tired, honestly, of the anti-immigrant sentiment, because at the end of the day, the main problems that the West suffers from, what's really causing the collapse, is this kind of capitalist system that's run amok, the corruption that's run amok, the feminism, the liberalism, the destruction of family, like all of that is what is destroying America, not immigrants. Immigrants, if anything, that are coming in are the most religious. Like, they're family oriented. They care about family. They care about traditional values. So how can you be for traditional values but anti-immigrant? That doesn't really make sense. That doesn't make sense, especially for Christians. Like, if you're a Christian, like these Christian nationalists, it's really moronic, their attitude, because it's completely contradictory. It's completely contradictory to say that, oh, well, we're a Christian nation. We have Christian values. We care about Jesus and Christ is King and the Bible is so important. But guess what? Like, Haitians are the most religious Christians there are. Haiti is a Christian society. These Haitians are Christians. Or the Latin Americans that are coming in from the southern border, they are Christians. They're more deeply Christian and they're more committed to the Bible. Their religiosity in terms of going to church, believing in the Bible, believing in God. The Latin Americans and the Haitians, they're far more religious than the white Americans, than the white Protestants. So you have to decide, do you want to preserve a white identity, or do you want to be a Christian nation? Because there's a fundamental contradiction in that. And you have all of these Christian nationalists who are trying to say that, oh, Muslims, are backwards. And look at Muslim societies. They're all dumps, S-hole countries. These are S-hole countries because they don't have Christ. They don't have Christ. Okay, let's look at the Christian countries that do have Christ. It's Haiti. It's Venezuela. It's Brazil. It's Mexico. Those are the countries that have Christ. They're the most Christian countries. Some of these African countries, they're very Christian. But, they're also S-holes by your standards. And you don't want people from those countries coming to America. So how does this make sense? How does this make sense? And the claim about crime as well, like the crime that's caused, is it because of their race? Like, is it because of their society? Like, what is causing the crime? Because when we compare the crime rates in African countries, in certain African countries, you have more crime in Russia. You have more crime in Eastern Europe who are white. These are white countries, but the crime in those countries are higher than what we see in many African countries. Look at Nigerians, for example. Look at Nigerians and Nigerian immigrants as well. They have very high success rates. Economically, they do very well. Nigerians. Why is that? It's because they're a very family-oriented community. They are, they have traditional values. Sometimes they're very Christian. If they're Muslim, they're very Muslim. That's why they do well. They do well, and they're black. So this kind of racist argument that, oh, these black Haitians, these black Africans, they're coming and they're going to destroy our society. Okay, the problem with, like, if you want to point to certain minority groups and say, well, the crime rate is clearly higher, per capita, the crime rate of this group, this minority group is higher. These kinds of racist arguments that Christian nationalists make, and then someone like Matt Walsh, makes these stupid racist arguments against blacks and Asians and Arabs. Yeah, the crime rate is higher because of liberalism. Because the liberal system, when immigrants come to this country, it destroys families, it destroys religious belief, it destroys traditional values. And that's what causes the crime. That's what causes the degeneracy. That's liberalism. That's the exact thing that you, white nationalists or Christian nationalists, are constantly promoting as the best part of what it means to be Western. Oh, the West, we invented democracy and equality and freedom, and we invented science. Yeah, that's called modernity, genius. That's modernity. That's the modernity that's destroying religion and family. That modernity is why you can't get married. Modernity is why you're an incel. Modernity is why you have all this degeneracy. It's because of modernity. So on one hand, you want to bemoan, oh, you know, these problems. And then you also want to claim that modernity is so superior and it's the invention of the white man, the white man's genius, the Christian genius. How does that make sense? And then if you point out this contradiction, then no, all our degeneracy, that's because of the Jews. The Jews did this to us. Really? Really? Like, that's the best kind of argument that you can make, is just blame it on Jews. I'm a critic. I'm a critic of Judaism. I'm a critic of Israel because they're engaged in an occupation and committing ethnic cleansing and genocide. Like, I'm a critic of Judaism and Israel, but they're not to blame for the degeneracy and the collapse of Western society. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care what Christian nationalists will say to this. I don't care, because that's the fact. Like, that's a simple fact. This train had left the station way before Jews had ascended within Western society. That's a fact. The Enlightenment in the 18th and 19th century, there weren't Jews involved with that. Those were post-Christian whites. Post-Christian whites developed this theory of freedom and equality as the most important values that we have to maximize. It was white post-Christians that developed this idea of constant progress, progressivism. They invented this ideology that has destroyed religion. They're the ones, these white post-Christians are the ones that said that, look, religion is just a bunch of myths and we don't have to believe in God. The founders of America were deists who didn't believe that the Bible is literally true. And they didn't believe that Christianity is, the only way to salvation. They didn't believe Christianity is how you have to model society after Christian values. They didn't believe in that. These are deists. So how can you tout modernity and use it as a cudgel to say, oh, we're so much better than Muslims on the one hand, but then bemoan, we're being destroyed by degeneracy and progressivism, and the left is just getting worse and worse. They just want to blame Jews. Jews are the ones who did this to us. Yeah, that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out. Deal with the contradiction in your ideology. Deal with the contradiction, and this, you're not going to be able to square the circle. Okay, if you want to be Christian, and you want to be a Christian nationalist, then you can't tout modernity and you can't tout this kind of racial supremacy. You can't, because that's not Christian, number one. And number two, look at these countries that are the most Christian, and they are, by your standards, the worst off economically. They're the worst off. They're the S-hole countries, They're the S-hole countries. So if you can't have your cake and eat it too, is basically what I'm saying. So what are you guys' thoughts on this? I want to react to the chat for a second, because I'm sure a lot of you have some thoughts on this. And also, let me look at the super chats. Since you talked about inflation and the corrupt centralized monetary system, what do you think about Bitcoin, a decentralized transaction settlement? POW consensus. Yeah, I'm not sure about Bitcoin. I think that there's potential there. As far as decentralization, there's questions about that. There seems to be concerns about governments cracking down on Bitcoin. They definitely can track your use of Bitcoin. So the anonymity factor is compromised, but, maybe, that's an avenue to pursue. If you're an individual investor, entire countries might start adopting more of this kind of digital currency. We'll see. But as far as it being tied to inherent value, is that the case? Some claim yes, Bitcoin is, digital currencies are tied to encryption. Therefore, it is some kind of inherent value, but I don't know. I'm not an expert, so can't give you definitive advice on that. Appreciate the super chat, passerby. Jazakallah khair. I don't know who this is. Blame shaitan and humans, not God. Definitely. Doesn't matter, Akhi, they're all puppets. USA is a capitalist system. They won't make healthcare cheaper, and they'll continue to send trillions to is not real. Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of what is causing the collapse of the United States is these wars, foreign wars like the war on terror, costing the United States billions, trillions of dollars, estimated over $8 trillion from the war on terror. So this is the end of an empire. If Jesus returned today, he would be called a terrorist, as he would be against the US/Israel the way he was against Romans and corrupt rabbis in the past. Agree. Isn't it strange? Most Israelis are atheists, but they think God promised them the land. Yep. Good point. Let's see. Daniel, I'm shocked you don't think Jews have a big hand in modern decline, from communism to the banking system to the moral degeneracy available online to the political control over many governments. Look, I didn't say that they don't have a role. But if you want a racial analysis, who has a role in these problems, whites have a big hand too. That's all I'm saying. Whites have a big hand to play in all of these systems as well. You think the banking system is only Jewish people? You don't think that there are any whites involved? Like, this is your analysis, right? A racial analysis. And by the way, like, what kind of Jews are these? These are liberalized Jews. These are secularized Jews. And the same happens with Muslims. Like, Muslims, when they get liberalized and they get secularized, they participate in the same corrupt system. That's why you have a country like the UK that has many Muslims now, increasingly, maybe some would say disproportionately, involved in government positions. In the UK. They're on parliament, the mayor of London, for example. And they're also pushing, like, they're pushing problems for society. So look at what is the cause? Like, what is the cause of the problems? There's no ideological component. Fine, you want to have a racial analysis. Okay, have a racial analysis, but then be fair. It's not just one race involved. And again, with the immigration, this becomes an issue, because on immigration, if you want to limit immigration because of these racial concerns, you want to maintain a white country, the United States is a white nation, or Europe is a white continent, etc. Okay, but what about modernism? What about progressivism? What about feminism? You'll just have like a white country that is feminist, pro-LGBT, progressive, like, but everyone is white. So what? So what? How does that help? Daniel, can you please run for president? I'm Canadian and we have a similar divide, so can you react to it one day? Yeah. No one's gonna vote for me, don't worry. This crazy influx of illegal immigrants is bad for any country. It's not hate, it's about saving the state. Do you see all homeless camps across these sanctuary cities? Yeah, well, what's the difference between illegal and legal? Like, if legal immigrants are coming to the country, then it's also going to have the same issues, the same problems that you have. Like, the problem is that, no, I accept that there's going to be societal turmoil if you try to quickly change the demographics of any country. If you start changing the demographic, like if you have a Muslim country and you start to import all of these Christians and Hindus, that's going to cause problems for that country. That's what's happening actually in the Middle East. Like, you have countries like Saudi and the UAE, and there's a huge influx of Christians coming to these Gulf countries, a huge number of Hindus that are coming into these Gulf countries. Yeah, it causes issues, it causes problems. I agree with that analysis, but when you make it racial and you make these kinds of claims about, well, we don't want certain races coming because they are low IQ or they're this and that, like that kind of analysis is not coherent, is not consistent, given, especially if you're a Christian nationalist. If you're just a white nationalist and you just want to have a white country that's LGBT, pro-LGBT and pro-feminism and pro-capitalism, whatever, okay, then you're going to just have that destructive kind of anti-human future, whatever. But the Christian nationalists, these conservatives that want to conserve, what are you actually conserving? If it's Christian values, then you shouldn't have this kind of racial analysis. Okay, what other questions? Comments? Yeah, so yeah, there's a super chat. I'm not going to put it on the screen though, because I don't want to get the channel banned. Yeah, here's a good point. Like, why are so many people migrating in the first place? Like, this is the kind of situation created by the capitalist West. Like, when you go and colonize the entire world and you extract the resources from the entire world and place the entire world into this kind of system where there's economic dominance from the Western superpower and you are at the mercy. Like, you basically have to give up your resources, you have to give up your economic leverage, because otherwise you'll be invaded or you'll be sanctioned. Your leaders are being bought. The IMF is basically holding your country in this kind of debt trap. Then you're going to create a lot of poverty around the world, and that poverty, people are going to naturally want to migrate to places where there are more opportunities, and that's the West. So if you're going to whine about immigration, you're going to whine about the Haitians, then address like the root causes of the issue. The root cause of the issue is this kind of liberal, capitalist, modernist system. Criticize the scientific revolution. Like, why aren't these white nationalists doing that? Because they want to just have these cheap talking points against, like, let's scapegoat Jews, let's scapegoat the Haitians, let's scapegoat the Muslims, because you actually intellectually can't handle the real problem, the real issue underlying these, the collapse of your civilization. Okay, let's get back to the reaction.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Crime here is up and through.
Yeah, so there's no reports of any dogs being hurt. No dogs were harmed, as far as we know.
The roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump.
Is migrant crime the problem with American society? Or, okay, fine, even if you concede, yeah, there's like, well, obviously there's been higher crime rates since the lockdowns, since 2020. There's been much higher crime rates. That's true. But is it something that is destroying the nation, bankrupting the country, or is it the corruption? Is it the lobbying? Is it these big corporations? Is it the endless wars, like the constant wars and belligerence to the entire globe, the saber rattling, the billions and trillions at this point of money that's going to the defense industry? I think that those are much bigger problems than the Haitians like eating dogs, quote unquote. So that's immigration. He keeps bringing up immigration. Yeah. The other thing about Christianity is, especially for Catholics, like let me focus on the Catholics for a second. Like you realize that if it weren't for blacks and Hispanics, the Catholic Church would have been completely liberalized by now. Like the only reason that they're holding out, the Catholic Church, on things like LGBT, on things like abortion, on these issues, the only reason is that you have these African cardinals, or you have, you know, these bishops and cardinals out of South America that are holding the line. They're the ones that are the last bulwark, the last stopgap, preventing the Catholic Church from capitulating on everything. Look at the German Catholics. The German Catholics are the ones that are pushing like women priests, and they're pushing this idea of LGBT and gay unions. And they're the ones, it's the Germans, the white German Catholics. It's the black and Hispanic Catholics, the Africans, the Haitians that are holding back the Catholic Church. So you want to be trad, you want to be one of these trad Cath nationalists, you have to thank Africa. You have to thank South America. Like they're the ones that you have to really be indebted to if you want to maintain these traditional values. Because if it's just white people, in charge, they're going to follow the German, like the German Catholics, the German Church. That's going to be the future of the Catholic Church. And you don't even want, like, all you have is like a racist critique, like you spit on them and you constantly are demonizing them, you're constantly insulting them, and you call yourselves Christians. Like, this is appalling. Like, this is I'm not appalled just as a Muslim. I'm appalled that you would have this kind of view of your own people, of Christians. Christian Catholics, they're even in your, and this is what we see. Actually, we see a lot of the Protestants now, as they get more religious, as they a lot of the Trump supporting Christians, they start becoming Orthodox, or they start becoming like more conservative Catholic, like some of the more traditional strands of the Catholic Church. So you're making those moves to being more traditional, more conservative. You're dumping Protestantism, but guess what? Protestantism is the white, it's white Protestants. Catholicism is more brown and black and Hispanic. So you agree with your church, like you agree with moving to more brown, more ethnic, religious orientation, with more religious strands of your tradition, whether it's Eastern Orthodox or more traditional Catholic. That comes with being less white. That comes with being less white as well. So, but they don't address these contradictions, and they're not going to debate me on this, by the way. Like the leaders of this kind of trad Cath nationalism, they don't debate. They're not going to debate. Why they won't debate? Because they know they can't solve this issue. Like, they can't start saying that, yeah, Christianity is the most important thing, Catholicism is the most important thing, because if they do that, then they have to admit that non-white Catholics are doing it better, and you have all this animosity towards the non-white Catholics or Christians. So that they will not debate me on this. Any other super chats? Let's see. Roddy, thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, let's continue.
As you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Well, I think this is so rich.
Yeah, that's a stupid claim that crime is coming down in this country. Like, anyone who is living in the country knows that crime is going up. So they're like trying to gaslight the American people.
Coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
That's a stupid point. What about the war crimes that you're committing right now by funding a genocide? Like, you're funding a genocide. You have been funding a genocide. All of these past presidents have been funding mass murder. So to just talk about like criminality, like, it's so hypocritical, and like, that's why you have to kind of turn off your brain to be involved in partisan politics and talk about like, oh, who are you voting for? And, oh, you know, are you following the election? Like, who's doing better? Like, oh, I can't believe what Trump said. Like, oh, he's such a bigot. Like, okay, making a mean tweet, right, from Donald Trump compared to funding mass murder and war crimes. Like, how is it comparable? Like, you have to just turn off part of your brain and act ignorant. Like, you don't know that they're doing these kinds of things. The fact that Trump has been prosecuted, he's not being prosecuted for the worst things that he's done in his presidency. They can't prosecute him for that because those are things that all the past presidents have done. That's stuff that the current president, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala, whoever's in charge of this country at this point, they're doing it right now. So those are the worst crimes that Donald Trump should be convicted for. So it just is like a constant eye roll to try to follow partisan politics.
Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice.
Wow, that's based. Now, that's why I want to see an actual Christian nationalist say, we're going to terminate this Constitution. Our Constitution is the Bible. That's why I want to see a real traditional Christian say. But they don't say, they're just LARPing as traditional Christians. Yeah, if Donald Trump said we're going to terminate the Constitution, then that would be much more likely to take him seriously.
Justice against his political enemies.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy.
In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
Vice President.
I don't know if that's true. I thought he did. and there was a clip of him saying that, well, we were lost by a whisker. He didn't sound particularly sarcastic in that clip. But I guess, you know, they did some focus groups, or they consulted with some experts, and they maybe thought, okay, this is a bad strategy. Let's stick with our original line that the election was stolen. So it's kind of flip-flopping there.
Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that.
Look at what's going on.
I mean, if Donald Trump's claim is true that the election was stolen, and I've commented on this before, like, obviously there's a lot of manipulation happening in that election. Like, how could there not be? When you get banned off of social media, you're the president, and right before the election, you get banned off of all social media. Like, isn't that election tampering? And what was it, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, who came out and said he regretted that? He regretted banning Trump, and now he's a Trump supporter. For what reason, I don't know. But let's just assume that Donald Trump is right and the election was stolen. If that's the case, what's stopping them from stealing it again? Like, why wouldn't they steal it again? And like, that, isn't that the logical conclusion? Like, the only thing that we can surmise or infer as just the populace is that, well, the fact that Trump is running again must mean that he believes that they're not going to steal it like they stole it in the past, which means he's made a deal. He's made a deal to basically accept certain parts of the establishment to go along with certain policies, maybe to agree to invade Iran or to start a war with Iran. Like, he's basically made a deal behind the scenes. Like, that's what his statements, if you take them all together, that's the inference that you would have to make, that Donald Trump has made a deal and he's bought and paid for. Otherwise, if he's not, then it's irrational. Like, why are you running again? Like, why are you running and participating in the same exact type of election that you participated in 2020 that you claim was stolen from you? Those mechanisms that allow the election to be stolen from you, according to you, still exist. So this is not rational, unless you know, it can only be rational if he's made a deal. That's the inference that we would have to make.
In the Middle East, this would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true.
Absolutely not true. I love Israel. I have a picture of Israel right on my chest in a locket. Every night when I go to bed, you know, I put a picture of Israel under my pillow. Love Israel.
My entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people.
I came out of the womb supporting Israel. My diaper was like, had the Israeli flag on it. That's how much I love Israel.
He knows that he's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is, it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known.
I mean, these are good lines. Like, these are good jabs. I think it's funny. Like, Kamala's performance in this debate was better than expected. I think that's the consensus, actually, and I agree. Like, I thought she was going to do a lot worse because in interviews that she's in, I get the impression that she's drunk. Like, she's been drinking a lot, or she's like on some kind of medication, like in a lot of her interviews. And I don't know what it is. Like, she tries to create this inflection or accent. But in this debate, she's like much more coherent. She's like making points. She's jabbing him. Like, it's humorous. It's entertaining. So I think that she did much better than expected. And I didn't really feel that Donald Trump had the killer instinct.
That these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President.
Like, oh, just worshiping the military. We love the military and we have to support them at all costs. So that's what's bankrupting the country. It's not abortion that's bankrupting the country, or like lack of reproductive choice. That's not what's bankrupting the country. It's not Haitians eating dogs. That's not what's bankrupting the country, like that false claim. It's the wars. It's the military. So, and they're not like, what's the difference between these two candidates? They're both pro-war. They're both pro-military. So it's completely divorced and detached from the actual interests of the American people.
President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question.
I think it's partly true. Like, I do think that Putin does prefer Kamala and a Democrat in office. I think that a lot of the Gulf states as well, a lot of the Middle Eastern states, any kind of authoritarian state, they prefer Trump because Trump, his base is going to support like more and more belligerence. Whereas with the Democrats, there's going to be pushback. Not much, but at least something that, we can't just support dictators. Like, this dictator is killing his people and repressing his population. We can't just give him a blank check. That's going to be the discussion in Democratic circles, like to a certain extent. Obviously, they do love dictators as well. But with Trump, it's like just a blank check for dictators to crack down. And so as far as like Muslims are concerned in the Middle East, Trump being president is going to be worse, I think, for Muslims in the Middle East, because these dictators are going to be even more empowered to crack down, especially on the issue of normalization with Israel. I think the only reason that some of these countries are not normalizing with Israel is that they're worried about backlash from their population, and then they won't be able to do massacres of their population, basically, or repress those protests or riots or whatever it may be, because the U.S. is going to say, hey, the optics of this are bad, you need to stop. So as soon as Trump is elected, then it's going to be back to, the iron fist repression and brutality, because Trump gives you that blank check. And the Republicans, the right wing, is going to give you the blank check. They don't care. Oh, who cares about the brown people who are getting massacred or being repressed? We don't care. Bomb them. Turn the Middle East into a glass crater. Like, that's the kind of attitude that you see. So I think the autocrats do actually prefer Donald Trump.
Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective?
On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And
Yeah, so that needs to be fact-checked. These are debunked claims. You have even ABC. You have actual national media that has reported recently that most of the deaths on October 7th were caused because of the IDF. This has been reported on by many mainstream sources at this point, and even the national news in Australia was reporting it. And it was obvious. It was something that was known from day one, but now, almost a year after, you have the mainstream reporting on it. And we've already debunked, we've already talked about this other mass rape claim, fabrication. So you can go to our other videos for that.
how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is...
And this is just lip service, like, oh, we're so concerned about Palestinian lives. Meanwhile, we're shipping them 2,000-ton bombs, so that the IDF can drop bombs on tents in refugee camps and burn women and children alive, innocent people by the dozens. Like, this is, you really care about the Palestinians, right? And she mentioned, like, quote unquote mass rape that Hamas did. This has been debunked by The Intercept. It's been debunked by The Times. It's been debunked by even some mainstream journalists beyond those two. So this is, the UN, like the UN report has debunked this. So she's repeating it. She's not mentioning the proven cases of the IDF engaging in sexual assault of prisoners. Where is that? That's one of the most shocking things that we've seen in recent months, and the mainstream media does not report it. You have IDF soldiers and even chief rabbis justifying the rape of Palestinian prisoners of war, hostages basically. But there's no concern from either of these presidents.
that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
Wait, the ceasefire, Netanyahu is not going to agree to a ceasefire. You have Anthony Blinken that's going to Tel Aviv, and he's not able to get a ceasefire. Why? Because you're not actually using any leverage. You have the leverage of cutting off aid. You have the leverage of not shipping weapons. As soon as the weapons aren't coming in, they're going to agree to a ceasefire. But you won't make that move. Why? If you want to have a ceasefire.
And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work
around the clock. To do what? Netanyahu wants to stay in office, and to stay in office, he has to continue the war. He has to expand the war. Now they're bombing Lebanon. They want to take over southern Lebanon, and they want to drag the U.S. into war with Iran. So, but honestly, I think that if Trump gets in office, it's much more likely that he's going to give Israel everything that they want with war. There's going to be a war with Iran. With Kamala, I think that they're going to be more hesitant to write a blank check for war with Iran.
around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and an equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
Now the IDF is going into the West Bank even more than ever, and they're trying to annex the West Bank. So what are you talking about? Like two-state solution like this, has been off the table for 2 decades now. Like two-state solution. And now when they've leveled all of Gaza, and they're now, a lot of these Israeli politicians in Netanyahu's party is talking about West Bank. They don't even call it that anymore. They call it Judea and Samaria. They're like, they've renamed the West Bank to just signal that, yeah, we're going to take it over, we're going to annex it, and we're going to expel all of these Palestinians. We're either going to kill them or we're going to expel them into Jordan. We're going to drive them out. And the U.S. is working around the clock. We're working around the clock for a ceasefire. Yeah, whatever.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty...
Wow. Okay, that's a vote for Kamala then. I vote for Kamala, and there won't be Israel in 2 years. Wow. Say less.
Good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror.
Do you want Ukraine?
Yeah, so this is, I think he's right to a certain extent that, yeah, it's going to be worse for Israel if Kamala is in office. If a Democrat is in office, it will be worse. And that's exactly why, like, Muslims should, I'm not saying support, don't vote for any of these criminals. You shouldn't vote for any of them. But, you know, in terms of what would be better, it seems like for Muslims in the Middle East, it's going to be better. And for Muslims around the world, Kamala being president is going to be better than Trump.
To win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. And it's...
Yeah, so that's pretty much all they said about Israel and Palestine. What's the difference? There's like barely any difference between their positions. And it's crazy that if you look at this genocide that's happening, it's been happening for almost a year. And none of these candidates want to say something like, I guarantee we won't go to war with Iran. Like, none of the candidates will say that. None of the candidates will say, yeah, we need to limit weapons to Israel. We need to put conditions and red lines and actually stand by them, because Biden had the red line of Israel shouldn't attack Rafah. But Israel is now has been bombing Rafah for months now, and nothing has changed in terms of U.S. policy. So none of these candidates want to give red lines. They don't want to give any guarantees. It's just a blank check, whatever Israel wants to do. The only bickering that they have is who loves Israel more. So how can like any Muslim care about this election? How can any Muslim care about partisan politics, the U.S. political system? How can you even bother getting involved? Like some of these organizations that are pushing Muslims to be more and more involved with politics. Why? Like, why would I even care. Like, this should always have been our position, and this is why I've been saying for years, even way before this current war, this current ethnic cleansing, genocide. That's always been my position, because they've always committed these crimes against Muslims and killed thousands, millions of Muslims, and their hands are drenched with the blood of Muslims. But this just like underlines it, and every election cycle I have to come up and either write a post, write an article, make videos that, hey, why are we so invested in these electoral politics? Nothing will change. Nothing will change. They're going to continue their crimes. And why do you want to sign your name on these crimes by voting? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? If you want to influence politics as a Western Muslim, you don't have to be involved with electoral politics. As I said many times before, there are different ways to influence the politics of a country. It's not always through participating in elections. And those are the kinds of strategies that we have to employ. Demographics, for example, that's a big part of politics. How big is your community? How much your community can organize? How much your community can concentrate wealth and develop wealth within the community while keeping that wealth in the community. That wealth can then have a big influence on politics, because the way that Western politics is structured is that there is a lot of respect and deference given to the wealthy groups. So if you are a wealthy minority, then you're going to, just by virtue of that wealth, get more attention from these politicians. They're going to cater to you more because of that. But you have to have a concentration of wealth. Unfortunately, Muslims, they don't organize, in the West at least. They're hesitant to keep wealth within the Muslim community. They don't support Muslim businesses as much as they should. They don't support each other as much as they should. They compete instead of supporting, or they divide on ethnic lines, so we're constantly divided. Oh, he's an Arab. This is an Arab neighborhood. Oh, this is Desi. This is South Asian. Oh, they're this, they're that. They don't have the right Aqidah. They don't have this and that. Okay, we can have those debates. We can have those arguments. But what about the interests of the Muslims, the Muslim community? There's no community organizing on that level, unfortunately. And when there is community organizing, a lot of that is funneled off or siphoned off into electoral politics. How many of these mega masjids, mega masajid, who have like millionaires in the community, they just extract money for what? For just like either building another masjid or, let's give money to these Muslim politicians so that they can go and be in the Senate or the Parliament or whatever, or these super PACs or these political action committees that are now siphoning off money from the Muslim community. This is backwards.
Only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him.
Yeah, on the one hand, he says he wants to avoid World War III. On the other hand, he says he wants to give Israel everything that they want. Well, Israel wants war with Iran. So unless you make a guarantee that I'm not going to take the U.S. into war with Iran, I'm not going to involve the U.S. in another Middle Eastern war, then you're going to get this World War III scenario.
Out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
First of all,
Yeah, so when it comes to Ukraine, he understands that, well, this is like a big problem for our country. There's all these lives being lost. He has even a humanitarian component to his criticism of the war. But all of that is left on the table when it comes to Israel. Israel is also drawing so much of American resources. They're taking so many in terms of weapons shipments, in terms of aid, they're taking from the United States. And there's also much more lives being lost in Israel's genocide than in the Ukraine. So why can't Trump be consistent, like have the same kind of position when it comes to Israel that you have for Ukraine?
Well, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here.
Yeah, we don't give up wars in America. We initiate wars, we drive wars, we fund wars that we're not directly involved with. We fund proxy wars. Like, that's what we're about. We're about wars and killing and destroying as much as of the world as possible with our belligerence. That's what America is about. That's our history. America has been at war since its founding, every single year of its founding, except for maybe 12 or 15 years. Every other year of American history has been been some war. So that's not who we are. Donald Trump wants to stop wars. We can't stop any wars. So how is this the Democratic Party? Like, Democrats were supposed to be these peaceniks, anti-war. No, we want peace. We want to hold hands with the rest of the world. But Kamala is saying, you know, we have to go to war. But I think that ultimately she would be less belligerent. Democrats would be less belligerent than Donald Trump. But ultimately, like, the issue is Russia and China. The U.S. is not going to be able to militarily check those two countries. Like, it's over. Like, that period of the U.S. being the unquestionable superpower that can just impose its will by force, by brute force, like, those days are over. Even with Ukraine, it's just a proxy war. You can just fund it, but you can't get directly involved. And it's extremely dangerous for your country to do so. Other countries are just developing this kind of this unity, this coalition, this bloc, like BRICS, for example. So the U.S. is really not going to be able to change or turn the tide on any of that.
I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Have you ever...
Like, so belligerent, like, this is shocking. Like, this is just the final whimpers of a dying empire. Like, still thinking that they will be able to bully everyone. And I liked how she said, like, the most sacred rule of international law, most sacred rule, you don't invade Russia. Oh, Putin, he broke the most sacred law. Like, imagine as an American president, like, saying that unironically. So it's just a clown show.
Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that...
Okay, that we repeated that. What else is there?
Right here in Pennsylvania, how quickly you would give up for the sake of... since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I...
A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating
the dogs.
She's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist.
Intended. You will see during the course of his rally.
She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute. I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please.
Okay, so that's the debate. I think we covered the highlights, and I watched it so you don't have to. It's not really worth your time. So now I'm gonna look at the chat for the remaining time, inshallah, of the stream. Please put in your super chats now, and I'll address it. And just the general chat, I'll also look at your comments. Okay, so we have some super chats here. Let's see. Okay, Big Bang Theory and Quran. Okay, whatever you say. Andraz, Jazakallah khair for your super chat, brother. Always appreciate seeing you in the chat. Let's see. 2.5% zakat is much better than Uncle Sam's 20 to 30% tax. Income tax, yeah, 30% if you're lucky. If you're lucky, but yeah, that's not socialism. Republican or Democrat, they're all the same coin with different sides. However, they're both controlled by a juice box. Let's see. Low key, Trump is like Abu Jahl and Kamala Harris is like Abdullah ibn Ubay, which is better. So I mean, Abu Jahl and Abdullah ibn Ubay, the Munafiq, like they didn't have millions of Muslim lives destroyed or killed. So, oh, brother Muhammad, I'm an 18-year-old attending a liberal college, and I'll be doing speeches about Islamic beliefs in my communications class. You're my inspiration. Jazakallah khair. It's very nice of you to share, brother. I appreciate you. But don't say anything that'll get you expelled. Be careful. But that's very nice of you to say. Wouldn't a Christian American anti-immigrant / anti-Muslim state be better than a liberal Zionist American state for Muslims globally? Yeah, I mean, if you had this theoretical possibility of a actual Christian nation that's anti-immigrant, would that be better than a liberal Zionist state? Like, we can imagine a Christian state. Like, imagine Mexico. Mexico is a Christian state. Imagine if Mexico decided, yeah, we're not going to have any more immigrants. We want to be purely Mexican. We want to preserve our Catholicism. Yeah, I'd much prefer that than having, you know, the United States or like a liberal state, because liberalism, like, let's put the Zionism question to the side. Like, liberalism is a universalist philosophy, so they have to export. They have to export their liberalism to the entire globe and force the entire globe to accept feminism, progressivism, scientific progress, force the entire globe to endorse LGBT, decriminalize sodomy, etc., feminism. Like, all of this has to be exported under a liberal state. This is what the US has done. This is what the Western European nations have done for over 200 years. And the entire Muslim world has suffered because of it. We continue to suffer from it in the post-colonial period as well. So liberalism has been a disaster for the human race. Like, that's the only way to put it. And then Zionism just adds on top of that. Like, Zionism is like another thorn, like another bullet in the chamber, in the gun to the head of the entire globe, especially the Middle East, especially Muslims. So yeah, if you have Mexico, like Mexico, you want to close your borders, no problem. Mexico hasn't caused like refugee crisis. Mexico hasn't been bombing the Muslim world and forcing the Muslim world to secularize. Mexico hasn't colonized anyone. So yeah, be more like Mexico. You Christian nationalists, be more like Mexico. Maybe open your borders to more Mexicans who can come in and actually demographically change America to be more Mexican. Actually, that's what we want. Okay, you want this racial analysis? Okay, I'll give you a racial analysis. America would be much more Christian if they were Hispanic as opposed to white. How about that for a racial analysis? Or more Haitian. Like if there were more Haitians in America, you'd be more Christian. You'd be more Christian, you'd be more traditional. Like that's the way the demographics work. So, but you can't deal with that reality. Let's see. I agree. Bilal, Brother Bilal, Jazakallah khair for your generous super chat. You say, I agree with you, brother. All Muslims should unite even if we have some differences. Yes, I agree. Hassan says, Russia has controlled opposition to further the world order. They've been run by the blank since the Soviet Union. Too many Westerners think Russia is against America when they're on the same side. I don't know about that. If they're on the same side, why are they engaged in a war right now? The war is just for a show? Like thousands of Russians are being killed. Thousands of Ukrainians and Westerners are being killed in this war. It's just a show to give the impression that there's conflict, but really they're all like meeting in back rooms and shaking hands and making deals. Like that's a conspiracy, but you have to give more evidence. You have to give more evidence that such a conspiracy exists. Okay, any other comments? Here's a comment. Daniel, what are your views on Iran, and is it support for Palestine real or fake? Well, I just go by what the Palestinians say. Like the Palestinian resistance says that Iran is helping us. So I believe what the Palestinian resistance is saying. Yeah, so there's another comment that's saying Iran's support for Palestine is not fake because it's existential even to Iran. You just have to understand modern asymmetrical warfare and not expect Iran to be directly involved with its army. Yeah, so Iran is clearly supporting the resistance. You can say, well, Iran doesn't care about anyone. They care about themselves. Okay, fine. But if they care about themselves, they would also support the Palestinian resistance and oppose Israel. Like, it's the same results, right? It's the same outcome. They are going to oppose Israel because Israel threatens Iran more than anyone else. I don't know what that means. White Americans want a Christian white country. Is that wrong? Shouldn't they be allowed to govern themselves how they want? Well, the problem is the contradiction between being a white nationalist country and being a Christian country. So this kind of white Christianity, this is something new, and it's something that has never existed before. In the sense that, yeah, you were a Christian country that was majority white, but taking white as an identity, that only comes with the Enlightenment. That comes with the Enlightenment, and that comes with atheism. It comes with secularism. It comes with modernism. And that modernism is what destroys the Christianity part. So this is a fundamental conflict This is a fundamental conflict, and you can't reconcile that. And you haven't demonstrated how to reconcile that. I'm just trying to point that out. And for some reason, these Christian nationalists can't compute. They can't understand it. Like, look at Spanish colonization. Okay, what did the Spanish do when they came to the West? When they came to North America? When they came to South America? They mixed racially. They mixed racially. They didn't have this idea of we are European people and we have to preserve, so we can't race mix. No, they're Catholic, by the way. They were marrying and intermixing with the native population, the Native American population. That's what the Spaniards did as Catholics. So why won't whites, like, if it's just religion that you care about, if it's just Christianity that you care about, well, that's the model. It's the Spanish model. White nationalism comes post that period of history. The Enlightenment comes after that Christian colonial period, and that's when you develop the ideas of the white race as superior because of IQ. The white IQ is superior. Why? Because we invented science, and we invent technology, and we invented democracy. We invented capitalism. That's why we're superior. All of those ideas, they don't come from the Bible. They don't come from Christianity. They don't come from the Catholic Church. All of that comes from the Enlightenment. And the people who are developing those ideas, the Enlightenment thinkers, are atheists. They're deists. They don't care about Christianity. They want to destroy Christianity. So if you want to take the white part of that, and you want to take the pro-technology, the pro-democracy parts of that, the pro-capitalism parts of that, those are the seeds that are going to destroy the Christianity part of it. So you're just going to be a white nation. Yeah, you'll be white, ethnically white, and you're going to also be feminist, progressive, pro-LGBT, this atomistic modern society. That's what you're going to get. But if you want a Christian country, then you should follow in the footsteps of the Spaniards. Because the Bible and the Catholic Church didn't have this kind of problem with race mixing. They didn't have a problem with it. They didn't even know, like, that's a problem. Because that's Christianity, like, destroyed that kind of ethnic identity. That's the thing. Christianity eroded or destroyed those kinds of boundaries. Why? Because we're not an ethnicity. We're not like Jews. Judaism is an ethno-religion. But Hinduism is an ethno-religion. Islam is not. You can be all kinds of different races as a Muslim, ethnicities. Christianity is not at its core. Now, if you did have like pro-white verses of the Bible, like in Matthew, Luke, Mark, Luke, and John, okay, then you'd have a case. But there are no such verses in the Bible. There are no such verses in the Bible. There is no such Catholic doctrine about preserving the white race. So that's what we need to debate. Okay, we need one of these Christian nationalists to debate this, but they won't, because this is like the sensitive topic for them, and they know that they'll lose that debate. Not gonna read Iman's super chat, even though it's funny. Do I watch anime? No, don't watch any anime. I'm an old man. I'm an old grandpa, practically. Macho Man says, Daniel, your points about feminism are materializing in my life. Sorry to hear it, brother. That's unfortunate. Gabriel says, isn't it natural for anyone to want to preserve their race and lineage? Yeah, I agree that it is natural. But is it like the most important thing? Like, is that the source of your identity? It can be a source of your identity. The problem is that if you base your identity on race, then you deprioritize a lot of other things. Like you deprioritize belief in God. You deprioritize belief in certain values, commitment to a specific church or belief system. And then when you do that, like when your religion takes a back seat, then you're eventually going to lose your religion. And I had a whole debate with this with a white nationalist on the channel, and we discussed like what is most important for society, religion or race. And watch that debate and watch the opening statement that I made. I make the argument that, look, if you want to be white and that wants, or Chinese or Nigerian, whatever race, and you want that to be like the important, like the most important part of your identity over everything else, then over time you're going to deprioritize religion, and you're not going to have religious values to guide how you live your life. How to get married, you know, how to maintain a family, how to raise your children, how to maintain gender roles, how to organize your community, how to deal with crime. Like all of those other things are left open and are very susceptible to change over time. They're susceptible to political changes over time. And this is why Islam is preserved over time. Islam is preserved in large part over time because we're not race-based first or ethnicity-based first. Like, no, preserving the religion, like that is the most important thing. Our religious values, those are our most important things that we preserve. Now, if you have a preference for your own lineage or you have a preference for your own race in the sense that you like your people's food, you like your people's form of dress, you like your people's culture, Islam doesn't say, no, you have to all homogenize, you have to be all one group. Islam doesn't say that. And this is the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where someone came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, you know, is it asabiya, like is it like blameworthy tribalism like racism or prejudice? If you like your own people, like is that a problem? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, what's a problem is if you are going to commit an injustice against another based off of your tribe. Like, oh, this person is not in my tribe, therefore I'm okay with stealing from him. This person is not from my tribe, therefore I'm going to prefer someone of my own tribe in a case of justice. Like imagine, like my tribe has stolen from another tribe, I'm going to defend my tribe at all costs. This is what is tribalism that's wrong and is rejected by Islam. And that's why Islam is different. Like Islam is saying that, yeah, no problem. Like you have like Chinese people, they like Chinese food and they like to hang out with Chinese people. Vietnamese people like Vietnamese food. They like Vietnamese people. They like Vietnamese culture. Qataris like their people and culture, etc. No problem. That is natural. Maybe even wanting to marry within your own people, like your own culture. Maybe that can also be justified. And you have that option within Islam. The only problem is if you are violating the rights of others because of that tribalism, because of saying, well, I'm going to stick with my race. That is wrong. That's rejected in Islam. That's like a beautiful balance in Islam that you don't find in other religions. Okay. Gabriel says he agrees, so that's good. Okay, so I have to go pray. See a lot of non-relevant questions. Yeah, because I wanted to address the immigration issue. I wanted to address the race issue, the white nationalist issue, the Christian nationalist issue. Yeah, and one of the ironies is that you see some of these white nationalists or Christian nationalists, they are passport bros, some of them. They're passport bros. So they go and marry the East Asians, or maybe they're going to marry someone from Latin America. So they are anti-immigration, but they're pro, getting their wives. Why are they getting wives from these other cultures? Because they don't want a white wife. They want a more traditional wife. They want a more submissive wife. So they go to these other countries to marry. So, but they still want to be like anti-immigration. Like you're immigrating the third from, you're bringing the third world into the West. You're just doing it like one woman at a time. You don't want to open the floodgates. You just want to bring one woman at a time as your wife. So these are the contradictions. And it's because why? Because these white women, they're white. Oh, they're pure white. What you care about so much. Oh, but they're feminists. Oh, but they're progressive. Oh, they don't want to get married. Oh, they want to have, 50 partners before they even consider settling with you. Okay, so you implicitly accept the idea that these other races are more traditional. They're more traditional. They care about family values. They're not going to divorce you and destroy your life. So that's the contradiction that you're not addressing. Or like Catholic, like you want a Catholic wife, like you want a pure Catholic traditional wife. Where are you more likely to find such a Catholic wife? Amongst the white population, or amongst the Haitian population, or the Latin American population? Find yourself a nice mamacita. Find yourself, Latin queen. She's going to be more traditionally Catholic. She's going to want to have more babies with you, more little Catholic babies with you than, the white woman. Okay, that's you wanted the racial analysis. So that's the racial truth. You traditional Catholics, trad Catholics, fine, be a Christian nationalist, but accept the consequences, accept the implications of that. Find yourself a nice mamacita. Have a lot, and you don't believe in contraceptives. She's not going to allow you to use contraceptive. She's not going to allow you to use contraceptive, and you're going to have a lot of babies. Is that what you want? You want more Christians in the world, or do you want more white people in the world? These two goals are diametrically opposed because of race, what you agree with because of race. So find a nice Nigerian. I want my kids to look like me, though. Okay, well, if you want your kids to look like you, convince these whites to become religious. That's what you got to do, but good luck with that. Good luck with that. And these white women. Is it a coincidence that all of these leaders of the Christian nationalism are non-white? Is that a coincidence? Like someone like Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens? Is it a coincidence that Candace Owens is like this hardcore Catholic now, and she's like a black woman, a proud black woman? Is that a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that Nick is not white? Muslim doctors for Sharia. Jazakallah khair, brother, for your super chat. Really appreciate it. That's really a good message. Muslim supporting Sharia. 100% on board with that. Islam is the cure for the world, and the cure doesn't succumb to disease. Yes, 100%, brother. Okay, guys, I really enjoyed looking at the chat and answering your questions. Again, sorry if I didn't answer all your questions. Some of them might not have been super relevant to the discussion, but we're going to have more live streams, inshallah, more shows for you lined up. I do have to travel, unfortunately, so I might not have another show for a little bit, but there will be videos posted, clips posted. So if you don't catch all of the Haqiqat show, you can get clips on the channel as well. Again, do not forget to subscribe. Please subscribe, and please sign up for the newsletter. It's really important for the channel, as I've mentioned many, many times. It's very important for our dawah. We have to stay in touch with you. So subscribe to the newsletter. It only takes 1 second. The link is within the description below. And yeah, you can find our videos on Rumble. So all of our videos are backed up on Rumble. You can subscribe to our Rumble channel. Why not? That might be our future home if YouTube says that these streams are way too hot. You know, the ADL is coming after me. So they've put a target on my back. Why? Because I oppose genocide. Because I'm tired of seeing Palestinian babies killed. I'm tired of seeing Palestinian babies with their literally their brains blown out because of 2,000-pound Israeli bombs supplied by Kamala Harris, and maybe in the future supplied by Donald Trump. I'm tired of seeing that, and I oppose that, and therefore the ADL is after me. The ADL is after me. So, you know, and I'm the first American Muslim that they've targeted in this way. And we know that the ADL, this Anti-Defamation League, they are directly connected to the Israeli government. So the Israeli government has a target on my back. So make dua for me and pray that Allah protects me from their machinations. And you can do tangible things to limit the power of these organizations to ban me, to ban MuslimSkeptic. You can take tangible steps. Number 1, subscribe to the newsletter. Number 2, spread the word about the channel. Number 3, clip episodes. Clip these episodes. Take whatever you liked and post it on social media. Create a clipping channel on YouTube, or create a clipping channel on Instagram or on TikTok or on Twitter. And just post clips, and then when you see other people post, share their clips, and that way you create an entire network, and that becomes ban proof. Once you have a big enough network, that becomes ban proof. And if we do that, then you can really support our dawah. If you believe in our dawah, you can help, okay? Especially if you're younger, you're a little bit computer savvy. It's very easy. There's free editing software. CapCut is a great editing software. It's easy to use. You can cut clips and post them. Whatever you like about our episodes, that'll really help our dawah in a major way. So if you want to help, you think that, well, I want to fight back against the ADL. I want to fight back against this lobby. I want to help this dawah. Create a clipping channel. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever, and I'll share it. I'll share and I'll promote it. So that's how you can help. So Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. I appreciate you watching. Thank you for everyone who submitted super chats. Really appreciate it. Inshallah, I will see you very soon on the next Haqiqat show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.